Your Partner in Success Radio is a free business podcast with host Denise Griffitts. It's all about great stories, conversation, and context to help you move your business and life forward with actionable tips and advice from her guest experts. To listen and subscribe, just find us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you consume your podcasts.
Welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I'm your host, Denise Griffitts, and this podcast is ranked in the top 2% of the most popular podcasts globally, and I am so proud of that. But I have to tell you, it's not because of me. It is all 100% because of my incredible guests, and they join me every week from all over the globe, really. So I am honored and blessed to share time with people who are at the top of their game, and they join us, and they are willing to help you get to where you want to be in life and in business. These are not people who hold back. Their goal is to share with us the essence of peak performance. So this is a quote. Now, personal branding is no longer optional. We all have to hit the reset button to compete and succeed. If you don't brand yourself, other people will, and I guarantee you they won't brand you in the way that you want to be branded. Catherine Kaputa. So my guest today is Catherine Kaputa, and she's a personal brand strategist, a speaker, an award-winning author. I have her book on my desk. She is the founder of SelfBrand, and from Madison Avenue to Wall Street to the halls of academia, Catherine has perfected her ability to market products, places, and companies. Yet she came to appreciate that one of the most important applications for branding is, believe it or not for products. It's for individuals to define their career identity and create their own success. Catherine has given branding presentations and conducted employee workshops at many of today's most innovative companies such as Google, Microsoft, PepsiCo, Intel, Merck, Unilever, and Citi. And she has been ranked in the top 30 global gurus in branding. Catherine, welcome back to Your Partner in Success. It's good to have you back.
Thanks for having me back, Denise. Great to be here.
Well, we had such a fascinating conversation the last time you were here, and it wasn't that long ago, 2 or 3 months, I can't recall now. But I remember saying, we're not getting as far as I wanted to get here. Can you come back? And, of course, I did it on the radio, so you couldn't tell me no. So thank you.
Right. Well, it's always great to be here. You know, and I was struck when you were giving the introduction that one of the things that people say to me all the time is, it should just be about the work. What is this, baloney with branding? It shouldn't be about whether people like you or how well known you are or how they perceive you. It should just be about the work. But the reality is it's never just about the work. It's always about something more. And I think today, we're in a time of change, Denise. We went through a pandemic, now people are getting back to the office more. But branding, I think, is more important than ever because Zoom is going to be a part of this. And, there's going to be a lot more options the way people, succeed at work. And I think you want to have everything in your arsenal, that you can use.
Oh, I agree with you. Listen, I've said this on this show for many, many years. People have to know you, like you, and trust you. It doesn't matter if you're checking them out at the Piggly Wiggly. They need to look you in the eye and go, hey, you're a nice person,
right?
Or you're whatever it is. But, we all have auras, right? We can almost instantly tell if somebody is, stay away from that person. So what is wrong with knowing you, liking you, and trust you? I don't get it.
Yeah. It's interesting because, people make an opinion about you. It shows, like a recent study showed, in like 2 seconds or less, people see somebody and that whether it's the aura, they pick up on what this person is really about, whether this person is authentic, honest, or a sham or whatever. It's like visual and verbal clues that we get that are almost instantaneous. I mean, one study out of NYU showed in 1/4 of a second, people peg somebody, whether they like them or not. And so that's important to understand. How do people perceive you? What is that, 1 second point of view that people get about you? That's an important thing to understand and take charge of.
It is. And you just reminded me of something that happened many years ago, but I was driving and I saw this guy standing on the street corner, and instantly I thought, there is something wrong with him. I'm willing to bet he is bipolar. Turned out somebody I knew him, and he was bad, really badly bipolar. In fact, I think he was put into, I think they hauled him off to someplace not too long after that. He needed help. But I could tell. And he wasn't doing anything. It wasn't anything he was doing. It just showed.
Yeah, it's amazing. And, that's why I think there's a lot of tips, from the branding world. Because one of the things marketers measure about brands, whether it's a product or a celebrity, is what they call the Q score. And that really measures how well known someone is or a product is, but how likable it is. And likability is important for brands, and it's important for celebrities. The ones that are the top earners are not only well known, but they're well liked. It's like Tom Hanks. We don't want to have him die, because he's a good guy. And, that's Jennifer Aniston is another person with a high Q score. Well, we're not going to get the Q score that the company develops for brands or for people or celebrities, but we get a Q score too when people meet us. And it's that split-second thing about whether they like you or not, and whether they feel there's a connection that they have to you, and whether they trust you. It all happens, very, very quickly. But, so that's why I think you got to think in terms of that, how you're perceived by others, because likability is important, and likability was a big thing when we were all in high school. It was a personality contest as much as anything. Well, the business world is that way too, right or wrong. So you really want to understand how others see you, and be authentic. And there's a lot of different types of personalities that we all like, but they all are authentic, and that's what a key thing you want to think about.
And I'm so glad you brought that up. I was writing an article yesterday that I need to finish today, and it was about podcasting, obviously, but authenticity is so important. You can't pretend to be something that you're just not, because it's going to show up eventually.
Yeah. I think we talked about this a little bit after we did the podcast last time, but, your voice is a key thing in a podcast, somebody's voice. And one of the things I was fascinated by when I was writing my last book, The New Brand You, was I was studying this, this whole change into podcasting, and so much of our communication now is virtual, and the power of a voice. And every one of us has a unique voice. No one sounds exactly like you sound. And, voices can convey intelligence or not, or being healthy or being sick or being likable, approachable, honest. All of these things, your voice is a very important part of all that. And so it's very important to take control of it. I mean, your livelihood is, part of your livelihood is your voice, Denise. And I remember I thought about that after the podcast and listening to your voice. You have a very, let's say, engaging, but kick your shoes off and relax with this lady, and listen to what she says. Anyway. How do you see your voice?
Oh gosh, I hate. You think I'm a lunatic? I hate to hear my own voice. If I accidentally hear it, I just bleh, because to me, I sound like I'm about to sing "Happy Birthday, Mr. President." I think I sound ridiculous. I try not to listen to myself.
Right. It's interesting because the first time I, did a recording and listened to my voice, I thought, that can't be me. That doesn't sound like me. Very few of us recognize how we sound and what that conveys. And so, that's something every viewer should do is, you can do it on your phone and then listen to yourself talk, just the audio. And what does your voice quality say? Ask other people to listen to it and comment what adjectives come to mind when they hear your voice. It's a very powerful tool that you want to use, in your favor.
It is. And, we're talking about you as my guest, and I've interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. And I've stayed in touch with many of them, because when I say my guests become my mentor, in many ways, I'm not kidding. But the only way I meet you is through your voice and through your writing and through social media. And your voice to me is the most important part because I can pick up nuances. I can tell if you're excited to, share everything that you know with the podcast. I can tell if you really know what you're talking about. And I can probably tell if you've got kids or cats. We can pick up an awful lot, from just listening to somebody very carefully.
Right. Yeah, it's more revealing than you realize. And you can discount somebody and not really listen to them if they don't sound intelligent. And so, that's a key thing to understand. And, one of the things that psychologists measure is the change in your voice, using your voice creatively to emphasize something or to get people to listen closer. A lot of things that you can do to communicate more effectively and have people remember, which was what you want, remember what you said and stand out in some important way. But,
and I love that you said that. Thank you. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I talk in my book about verbal identity, and part of that is your voice and your messaging and things that you communicate, the way you communicate with other people. Is all very, very important and contributes to business success. And I think, on the other hand, there's, visual identity, how you come across. And that's powerful too. First impressions are largely visual. They happen very quickly. And we take somebody in and we make a judgment on them, right or wrong, but it's human nature.
Of course it is. And people say, oh, you shouldn't be, looking at people, judging them. That's how we keep ourselves safe. Let's just be real about it. If you see somebody that they may look perfectly fine and they may look beautiful, but you can tell that there's something that you just don't want to be around, move, get away.
Right.
This is how we keep ourselves safe. It's safe. We've done this all of our lives. We have to judge to some degree. We're silly if we don't.
Right. It's part of survival, and it's got long roots, thousands of years, and whether we can embrace somebody or run, is all determined in a matter of seconds. And so it's valuable intelligence, and it's valuable intelligence in the work world too, because there's some people you don't know why maybe, but you don't trust them. You don't trust what they say. Pick up on those things. That's valuable.
It is. And what we're talking about right now, so the audience knows once they get the book, Brand New You, How to Wow the Brand. No, I always get this wrong. The new Brand You, How to Wow in the New World of Work. And once I read the book, I went, oh, I see why she created the title the way she did. But for those of you who are listening and who need to pick up the book, and I suggest that you do, we're talking right now about chapters 14 and 15, giving Brand You the wow factor. But I wanted to ask you, because we started out very, very quickly, and I wrote this down, branding yourself, and people will say, and I can hear them saying it, I think you kind of mention it, branding yourself, so why do I need to brand myself? I'm part of a big company. I just go to work and I come back home. That's just dead wrong. Tell us why that's wrong.
Well, no, it's dead wrong because the thing is we're living in a very dynamic world. A year ago they were hiring it like crazy, America's largest companies. And the news this week, Amazon is laying off 10,000, Microsoft is laying off, all kinds of companies are laying off people. And so you don't want to, you want to have control of your life and control of your career as much as you can. And I think that's why personal branding is important, because when you stand out and stand for something as value and you are visible in your company, not only, in your department, maybe in a larger area of your company, maybe, in outside activities with people at your company and things like that, you'll be much more likely to survive and thrive in today's dynamic world. And so that's why I think it's important, because, you see so many layoffs now. it's a totally different story. And there are some people that, when you make these decisions, you're thinking of a lot of different categories. Do I know the person? Do I like the person? Have they contributed? And a lot of times people think it's just about the work, and they don't communicate to their boss well about, here's what I did, here's what happened, and bring stories to life about, successes on projects and stuff like that. You want to be somebody, that communicates well and has a point of view and brings something, is a valuable asset to the company and somebody people like to work with and things like that. So, it's critical because of the, dynamic world. We're in a world, too, that's global, and you can have competitors from any country around the world that can do your job. And, now we have AI, so we have artificial intelligence that's also affecting things. And that's going to change, jobs. Already it's, people are studying it, and, a lot of simple tasks maybe that are repetitive, we don't like to do, can easily be done with, artificial intelligence. And so you need to add GBT.
Yeah, I'm studying it like crazy.
It's amazing. I asked a question, write an essay on, personal branding, and, a minute later, this 3-page report comes out that was pretty good. It's pretty amazing. So a lot of tasks are going to be robotized, done by robots or artificial intelligence. And it's important to understand it, how to use it to help your performance. And
seriously,
be different. Master it, right? Exactly. It's going to be a part of us. It's pretty amazing. But
it already is,
right.
And it will. But here's the thing. You can create. There are all kinds of new. People are creating these. Well, here's the points that you want to, put into ChatGPT. They're already creating new industries around this quickly.
Right.
Within weeks of it opening up, people are just going, oh. I've got, now do I trust all these? No, it's too new. I don't think, know as much as they ought to know just yet.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But they will. And I'm watching, but I'm not buying anything.
Right. Right. Yeah. No, the world is, we're seeing change that we never saw before, very rapidly. And so we need to be turned on to that and, find a niche where we add value that, and artificial intelligence can't do everything. They're picking up stuff that's already out there. There's always going to be room for interpretation and value added, and you need to be part of that. That's the whole thing you want to think about. And,
exactly. And remember, yeah, exactly. And remember when computers, I had to have the first computer. It cost me $3,000. It was a very fancy word processor. Word processor. I can't talk today.
Right. We don't even use that word processor anymore.
I know. And seriously, it was a boat anchor. It was MS-DOS. I still have those. I still don't have the computer.
What did you use it for? Because I remember when they first came out and they were big and bulky and heavy, and I thought, what are people going to do with this?
Well,
and
that's just it.
People were using it for recipes initially,
exactly.
And then it took off. Then it took off, and
then we got the internet.
Yeah, the internet.
But I always knew. I just knew that I was going to build a life and build a company using computers before we had internet, before we had graphical user interface, before we had WordPress, before we had social media. I just knew. And look, I was a jeweler by trade. So I jumped out of that and jumped into the internet, and I've been here for 20 years. But the thing is, when people say, what are you going to do with the computer? What are you supposed to do with this? Well, you learn. Right. But I'm afraid of it. And I would hear that my mom, oh, my gosh, I'm scared. I'm afraid I'm going to break it. Well, Mom, it's only as good as what you put in it. And it's the same with AI. So don't be afraid of it. Master it.
Right. Master it and embrace it, because it's going to be here. And I think those are, I remember when, as you said, when computers first came out, the savvy people, I had a friend in advertising, she bought one and she was carrying it home with her on weekends and keeping it in the office. But she learned to figure out how it could, increase her effectiveness and stand out at the company. And she did. And she did. So,
Good for her.
Change is always going to happen. And it's always important to understand, to study it, master it, where you fit in, and how you can succeed in this new world, because it's ever evolving, and that's what makes it interesting.
And you're right. It's coming at us fast and furious. I don't sleep a whole lot anyway. And now I'm like,
right.
It's new. I gotta go find out. I need to know more. Oh, that's scary.
Right.
I'm thinking I may never sleep again. But getting back to what we were talking about just a few minutes ago, we were talking about, when you're in a company and, you think you're the lone person in the company nobody's paying attention to, there's a quote, was a little section in your book, being a Jack or Jill of all trades is nowheresville in branding. And it's kind of like with your resume. Unless you stand out if your resume and you're trying to get a job, do you know how many of those things are shredded? I mean, they just don't get read. You have to show up.
You have to show up, and I always say oversimplify your message. You want to stand for something that's important, that's different from other people, that's relevant for the current marketplace. Those are the key things, and that's very focused on one idea. That's why, a lot of people you read the resume and it's, I can do this, I can do that. Well, that's nowhere. You want to own an idea, stand for something that's important. You really need to understand your target audience, but you need to, solve their pain. And that's a key thing. That's, one of the other things I say in branding is you want to think outside in. Who is my target audience? What do they need, and how can I be that person that provides that need? That's a key thing that you want to think about. For example, when I was trying to break into the advertising business, and before that I had worked at a nonprofit, and everybody thinks you can't work in a corporation if you've worked at a nonprofit, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And I moved to New York. I'm looking for a job. I'm staying with my aunt and uncle in the Bronx. I want to get out of there. I want to get a job. And everybody would say, well, you're a nonprofit background, you're, an academic, you can't succeed in an ad agency. And so then I decided, well, what do they need that I can provide and get them to stop? They were branding me. They were branding me as a nonprofit-only person that couldn't even get an entry-level job in an ad agency. So basically what I did was I said, I'm a marketer for difficult products. And I compared working in the nonprofit area with very little money. I had to be more creative in marketing the nonprofit and to get people to contribute money and to have successful exhibitions and things like that. And it clicked with somebody because, I got in the door, and it clicked because and I was targeting ad agencies, but every one of them has difficult accounts or difficult products. No one ever used that pitch before, and it really made them stop thinking of me as a nonprofit person, as somebody that can only work in art museums or in academia, to somebody that can, work at an ad agency that has a lot of difficult products that they have to market. And anyway, so that was my foot in the door. And then once you're in the door, then you have the opportunity, to prove yourself. But that's a key thing to think about, is think outside in. What does the marketplace need, and how can I find that in myself to provide a solution to that? And that can help you stand out from the crowd. As I say, I've never met anyone that used that positioning before.
And see, that was absolutely brilliant. And as you know, I'm a web developer. And when I do my initial consultations with web clients, everything that they just knew they needed to have or do on their website, we threw out 80% of it. It's not about you. It's what you bring. What do you bring to the table? How do you solve problems? How do you help? when somebody comes to a marketing agency, I guess, or to a web developer, they want to know what's in it for them. And if we can't provide that, we don't get paid.
Right.
So
that's
you
the
say
key
in
thing.
your,
You need.
it is. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Remember I told you when we're on the phone like this, it might be a little bit of a delay. So I mean,
lag, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things that I mention in the book too is, most of us don't know who we are. There's that whole saying at the in Delphi in Greece, know thyself, and most of us don't know ourselves and what our strengths are, what our weaknesses are, how we can best package them. That's an issue. That's a real problem. It's very important to know yourself and also know your customer. Who am I really marketing myself to? How can I stand out as somebody of value? And as I said, that's a focused idea that's different and certainly has to be relevant to what's in the market today.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to ask you, because in the book you say brand is about subtraction, and then you beat me to it. I think you're reading my mind.
Yeah, that's the key thing, because everybody thinks, oh, if I say I can do this, I can do that, I can, I have these skills. It's too much. You need to think about where you want to go. Where's your trajectory? Where's your trajectory? What's your next job that you want to have? What's the one after that? Sort of have a vision for yourself, and then have a vision of, each step that you need to take and what you need to get there. I mean, I did that throughout my career. I got that first job in advertising that way. I'm a marketer for difficult products, and I was there, 4 years. And then I had friends that, the thing in those days was, to work at a big creative ad agency that was doing a lot of big TV commercials. And I was doing more strategic work, which is obviously very helpful to me today, in personal branding. But, so a friend of mine was working at this big, very creative agency called Wells Rich Green that had the I Love New York campaign. And he said, they're looking for someone to work on that campaign. And he said, but, they're looking for somebody with a lot of TV experience, travel experience. You don't have any of those things. And I said, get me an interview. He worked there. So he got me an interview. And the interviewer was saying, what are you doing here? You don't have big agency experience. You don't have big TV experience, blah, blah, blah. And I said, but one of the things he told me when we had lunch before my interview, he said, I'm not sure you want to be on the account because it's a very difficult client. You have to get agreement with all these politicians in New York to approve the advertising, and they all have different points of view and very difficult to deal with. And the last person, quit after 6 months or something like that. And I said, get me the interview. And during the interview, I said, the guy said, why are you even interviewing for this job? You don't have the right background. And I said, well, my specialty is working on difficult products and with difficult clients. And I didn't tell him that my friend told me the client was difficult. And I talked about my, ability with my current clients to get consensus and, achieve things and get everybody on board with the campaigns that we wanted to do. And so that was the key thing, to do your research, but I was thinking outside in. They were looking for somebody that could manage a lot of diverse, politicians that had to approve the advertising or provide an input. And I looked at my background and the parts that I could tell that story, that I was very good at building consensus. And it got me a job supervising the I Love New York campaign. And I got a lot of TV experience in that job. I got a lot of experience. You work with Broadway shows, you work with politicians, all these different people. And, it was a great opportunity, but I would have never had that if I was just a jack of all trades. I zeroed in on that CV and my elevator pitch. I'm a marketer for difficult products and with difficult people. And that was what they needed, so that's why it can be very helpful to, turn the tables a little bit and look at the broad marketplace. What's different about me? How can I stand out? And, what's relevant? How's the market changing? What could change that could hurt my career? And where could I insulate myself, and what new skills or abilities, can I get that could be very useful?
It sounds like you know yourself very, very well, and I'm asking myself I'm telling myself, ask her this question: did anybody teach you this, or is this just part of who you are? Because you're very, very good at it.
Well, yeah, it's funny. One of the strengths that I found that I have is in this area of strategy and what's going on in the marketplace and how can I succeed? What qualities do I have that match that? And there's a lot of other things that are of value in the thing. But for example, I said I started out in the nonprofit world. I worked at the Seattle Art Museum. I had a great job there. But, I thought, I got to get a PhD, if I'm going to be successful as an art historian. So, I applied. And, when I was at the Seattle Art Museum, I was part of the team that worked on a big book on the art collection of the museum. And I asked my boss, when and I had another colleague said, don't bother asking, he's going to say no. And this other colleague and I had done most of the work, the research and the writing. And so I went to my boss and I said, could our names be under yours on the title page? And he said yes. And so when I applied to graduate schools to work in a PhD and I applied to Harvard, I had a book that I could send as part of my application, and my name was on the title page. And that would have never happened if I hadn't thought, gee, maybe my friend, my colleague said, don't bother asking. He's the head of the department. He's going to say it's all his. But I asked, and I said, as you know, Bill and I did most of the work, and, that would be great if we could get credit on the title page. So you'd be surprised what, and so I don't think I would have been able to get into Harvard if I didn't have that book as something that made me stand out. And, so you want to think a little creatively and strategically, and ask for things that you feel and that you have a good case to ask for.
I have that written on my whiteboard. Just ask.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're going to get a no or a yes,
right,
or they ignore you, which is essentially a no, but you don't know unless you ask, ever.
Right, exactly. And I told no a number of times when I've asked for things, but you just never know. And that opened up an important door. I got into Harvard, graduate school. Then I decided, 5 years later, this is not me. And I think I want to explore advertising. That was a pretty big mind change.
Yeah, where did that come from?
Well,
did it just pop into your head?
Well, the thing is, working in academia or art museums, it's not that dynamic a world. And people tend to get a job, they hold it on for life. It wasn't dynamic, and it was kind of like know yourself. And then I thought, gee, this isn't a good fit for my personality. I need something more dynamic, that's more of the world, that's changing more, that's not working in an archive, researching books and, doing something like that. So, it was kind of, my fault that I didn't really think of who I am initially in picking careers, but, you kind of learn on the job sometimes. And I thought,
oh, absolutely.
I'm not a scholar. I don't want that I'm not a monk, I don't want that kind of life. And most people in that business, you don't see a lot of job changing. It's a very static kind of thing. If you get a good, the job I had at the Seattle Art Museum was taken by my colleague, and it would have been hard for me even of getting that fit if I finished with the PhD. It would have been hard to get a job that was as good as that job that I'd already had. So, it was kind of learning who I am and thinking, gee, this is not a good fit really long term. And, you don't have any, choice of switching jobs. There's so few jobs in that art museum world. There are very few, or teaching.
I would think so. But it sounds to me like you figured out who you were going to be, not who you were at the time, but who you were going to be, and you set the path and off you went.
Right, yeah. Because I think certainly asking, can I be credited as a co-author of the book, that was a pretty gutsy move that not every person would make, because I was a very junior person at the time. But I and my colleague had really project from start to finish. And the tradition in, a lot of these things is the head person gets all the credit. But if you approach people in the right way and give a good pitch, and I, in my pitch, I said, it would help my career and Bill's career to have our names on the front page. Because if you're not on the front page and you're just in the acknowledgments, it doesn't count. People, don't think we're that involved in it. So that's what, is important. But, I did a lot of thinking when I started questioning whether I wanted to stay in this field. And I think that's something people can do, your audience can do. Do free association. Just take a walk or, lie on your couch and sort of think, where do I see myself going in the future? Am I happy in this job? Is it building on my strengths? You always want to go with your strengths. And what's not working for me with this job? How visible am I in my company, in my department, how do people perceive me? How do I want them to perceive me? These are all questions you need to ask yourself. And begin with free association, that was kind of the thing. When I first, decided to leave that PhD and leave academia and museum work and come to New York, I was looking in two areas. I was looking in advertising, and I was looking in journalism. And I was originally a journalism and advertising major at Northwestern, and then I switched in my junior year to art history. So I had that background, and then I kind of thought, maybe my first career choice was the right one. And I couldn't get a job in journalism in New York. It's very competitive, and people said, you go to a small town, work on a small town newspaper, work on a small town radio station. And, I kind of had my heart set on New York City, and moving to New York. So I didn't like to hear that. But as I said, I was also targeting ad agencies, and I happened to finally connect with one that liked my pitch, difficult products, and said, I've got some difficult products here. And I said, give me your tough problems, and, then that's how I got my start. So it's, you're going to stumble a little bit and maybe make some changes that don't work, but then you change them. That's why I say, it's to be successful. It's, my formula is, people say work hard and you'll be successful. Hard work is important, but it's not enough. That's why I say hard work plus branding equals success.
And, while you're talking, I've been scribbling all kinds of, notes because of things I wanted to ask you, but we're talking about careers and, careers working for other people largely, but if you're a solopreneur, as I am, an entrepreneur, we change our brands too. Look, I was in, I've always been a web developer. I build code in my sleep. It's just what I do. I'm a nerd in stilettos. I can literally be standing over the sink or the stove and cooking something, and I can build a website in my head before I've left the kitchen. I can see it.
Wow.
It's really interesting how it works.
Yeah.
But at one point when the virtual assistance industry was very young, right now everybody and their grandmother's a VA, but when it was very young, I added that as an added-on service to my company, and I did really well with it for a long time until it became grossly overpopulated by people who had a keyboard but nothing much else. So I quit, and that was difficult because I gave up a lot of retainer money, but I was sick of it. So we go through this, and for me, it's about every 10 years.
What did you brand your brand into when you got out of that virtual assistant
social
work?
Media marketing now, which is a completely different
of course,
thing.
That's the hot thing.
Right. And I'm very good at it because I love it. But I got out of it, and I cried a little bit. Because it's like, oh, my God. But once I was out, I had a relief because now my creativity came roaring back and I could do something different. So it happens with all of us. But I wanted to ask you, Catherine, because I'm your book again. I love this book. And I am at the Elite Brand Experience, and you've got 5 superpowers of elites. Can you share those?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Well, in the book, I deal with the top 10 brand strategies from the commercial world of brands and how people can use those strategies for Brand You. And, and there's a lot of strengths in that. I have a online assessment test that you can take as a result, to sort of give you some information on what your brand personality is and what the best fit is in these top 10. And one of them is elite. And elite, a key thing about elite brands is they're expensive. So if you're somebody that sees yourself as having special knowledge, that's part of an elite, we talk about the political elite, the Hollywood, the A-list, there's an elite crowd that's, top performers in an area. And a big part of being elite is you have a special superpower, but you're also expensive. So you're expensive and you're worth it. And so it's a great positioning to have because, you're not going to be struggling for money because people have this perception that this person is, special and worth it. And, so getting to the superpowers of elite, and I'm scrambling to get to that section because for each brand I wrote down, 5 superpowers. So there's this whole sense
it's on page 126.
Yeah, I'm there now. Okay, great.
Okay.
All right. So basically, a key thing of elite is you're perceived as the best in class. You have to be confident to be an elite. You have to be confident that you're special and that you have some special secret sauce that's worth the money, but perceived as, top quality, ambitious, strong credentials, a high profile. So if you're going to be positioning yourself as elite, you want to get some key things under your belt that you can say, I did this, that, and the other thing. Very important. And elites also have elite contacts. They have a Rolodex. They know people. And that's a key reason you hire an elite. Not only they're best in class, but they know people to get a job done in the best way possible. And, I say here, they know everybody who's somebody and then some. And the other thing about elites is, they're busy. They're in demand. You also want to create this perception, whether it's true or not, that you're hard to get. So, if you approach an elite lawyer, well, I've got a lot of clients at the moment, maybe I can get to your situation in 3 months' time. So you want to create that sense that you're hard to get. They may have to wait a little bit to get you. But they're worth it. They're busy. They're in demand. And a key thing about elites, too, is, they look elite. I always say if you want people to think you're creative, you want to look creative. You want to think you're elite, you want to dress like it. They're well appointed. They have expensive clothes, and they look like it. I don't know, many of you watch the series Succession, but there was a run, the key character, Logan Roy, wears often a baseball cap, and it's like a wool baseball cap. And there was like a run on people calling, and he's an elite. He's like, multi-billionaire owner of this company, Royco. And, there was like all these phone calls to the network saying, where'd you get that hat? And it turns out it's a $600 baseball cap that's from an Italian company called Loro Piano that, uses rare Mongolian cashmere, to make these hats.
Oh.
And they even have ones that are like baseball caps, that are $1,000 each, So it's this whole thing of being well-dressed, well-appointed, looking the part, and the sense that, this is your reign, you're entitled, this sense of superiority that I am where I am. So, Denise, you're an elite. Tell me why you've chosen that strategy.
And I was just wondering that. I'm looking at, your 5 superpowers, and I think I'm pretty darn good at what I do. In fact, I know I'm darn good at what I do because I love it.
Right.
I love what I do. I'm who knew I had a techie mind? I didn't. I had no clue.
Mm-hmm.
It finally just, when I went back to college and got my little computer science degree, all of a sudden I said, oh, I have a scientific mind, until I got to algebra, and then I just failed miserably. But that's a bunch of made-up nonsense. I don't care what anybody says.
Right.
But once I figured out who I was, what I wanted to do, how I was going to do it, I consider myself to be best in class at what I do. I really do. I'm very proud of what I do. Does that help? Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. And I think this is very important for, I think, women in particular to hear. A lot of studies show women are too humble, and they feel guilty saying, I think I'm good. I think I'm the best. I'm in the elite group of this area of expertise that I have. And I think it's very important. I mean, you don't want to be a braggart. Nobody likes that. But on the other hand, you don't want to be, they say humility is a virtue, but not so much in the business world. And I think that, and the problem is if you're really humble, people might believe you, and that's why you need to feel comfortable saying, I solved this problem, and tell the story. Here's how we did it. And take ownership of what you've achieved and being proud of it. And a key thing, and that's one of the things I always admired about people with this elite strategy. They're very confident, and they're always making sure that they are at the cutting edge. They stay up to date, and got credentials, and, they stay relevant because they're in the middle of important projects, so they know what's going on.
We're always learning, and, there's not a whole lot that escapes our attention. The problem that I have, and I suspect that you have, is cutting some of it out, saying, well, this isn't really what I need to be worrying about right now, or learning about where is this going to take me. And that can be tricky because I'm intensely curious. Most people like us are intensely curious, and we want to know stuff. We want to know how it works. Why is it? What the heck is that? You have to learn to be kind of brutal about what you're going to put your attention on.
Right. No, it's key, because otherwise you won't be able to achieve much. You'll be all over the place. And that's why I emphasize in the book a lot, whatever your strategy you choose to take, you want to focus on that and bring it to life. And each one is different and picks up on different strengths. And, you're obviously an elite too, because you're first to do something. You were very early out on, buying a computer, for example, and things like that, and the whole blogging. Now everybody and their sister is a blogger. But
and a podcaster.
You were early to that, and a podcaster, right?
15 years I've been doing
podcaster.
This. Right.
Podcasting is the new thing.
It is, and I wish everybody well, but I hope that they will take the time to figure out, I'm going to say this right out loud, if your podcast is not making money and it's a hobby, don't spend a lot of money on it. Take it easy. Go easy. Keep it simple, stupid. Learn as you go. That's my best advice.
Let me ask you, why are people doing that? Because I've been struck by that, how many people, everybody's starting a podcast, and then the next thing you hear is they're closing it down.
And
have to. Because they don't
spend
have
a crap ton of money, on stuff that they had no. Listen, a whole new industry popped up 2 or 3 years ago. I haven't really been paying attention, but all of a sudden, there were these little industries, little companies say, oh, well, we can edit your podcast. We can edit out the and the on. We can put music on it. It's about, as far as I can tell, somewhere between $300 and $500 an episode.
Wow.
Look, this is why I do it live. I don't. You're going to hear me yelling at the cat. I've been known to say, "Quit being your brother's butt" out loud. But I do it live because it's a conversation, and I get to speak with you, talk with you. You don't have to wait for it. An hour after we hang up, it's out there. It's gone. It's it's all over the internet, and I'm back to work, and so are you. You don't have to go, well, what did we talk about? What the heck? So, I do things my own way. I always have. But to me, this works. But what happened, I just lost my train of thought. What happened was when new industries pop up and they have good reasons or, good copywriters, I'm going to say, oh, you need to do this. You need to, in my opinion, sanitize your podcast. If it looks like it was produced in a studio or sounds like it was produced in a studio, I think you lose, again, this is just my opinion, you lose a lot of the real stuff, the emotion, the back and forth, the chat, the opportunity to ask questions.
Right.
It's just different for me. And when people do this and they don't have a plan and they don't have a business plan and they don't have a way to fund it, they're going to lose.
Right.
And they're going to lose big. And I hate to see it.
Right. Yeah. And I think it when it's overproduced and like overproduction values, it doesn't sound authentic. I think you were making that point. It doesn't sound authentic, and it's just like another corporate. It's like a corporate video compared to something that's taken with a phone and has real life to it. So I've
it's
been
easy
struck by,
to do. Yeah,
right.
You can start a podcast honestly with something like Blog Talk Radio or Hello Audio. There's so many different things available now, and your phone.
Right.
Don't put yourself in debt. Just don't.
Right. And what about knowledge? I guess I wonder too, like some of these podcasts, is the concept a good one? Or do the people really know anything that people want to hear? That I don't know. It just sort of took off. There's so many podcasts. There's a lot of great ones. And I love the fact that you can listen when you're taking a walk or driving the car or doing housework and things like that. I really am a big fan of the whole podcast industry because I think it's a great way to get information. Sometimes your eyes get, too exhausted. It's nice to relax and I listen to a podcast. What do they have to say?
Exactly. And I'm not one of those people who will sit down and watch movies or even short videos. You've got to get my attention within the first 2 to 3 minutes. I'm out of there. But listening, that's a whole different thing. And I was on an interview for a magazine yesterday, and they were asking me a lot of what you're asking me. But and by the way, if you're ever wanting to do a podcast, you call me. I'll learn you how. I'll teach you everything I know.
Mhm. Right. Yeah. No, it's funny. Like people jump on the bandwagon and spend a lot of money, and then they realize, gee, I'm not getting. What's my reason for doing this? Am I? It's like an open pit here. Of
and it's easy to quit. When you see that you're not
Right.
getting downloads, you're not getting sponsors. Why would anybody
Right.
sponsor you when your podcast is 8 minutes old? I mean, come on. Get rational, get smart, and be consistent. Like you are. You had your dream. You had your interior brand mapped out,
Right.
even if you didn't know it. And you were very consistent about getting out there and getting what you wanted and making it happen. You can't just say, oh, well, if this doesn't work in 6 months, I'm gone. You just can't.
Right. Yeah, people aren't thinking it through. And there's always change, and things go on that you change your mind about where you want to take your brand. I mean, I moved out of, I had a long career in the advertising business, and I became a corporate client, so I moved over to that side because, I reached a point when I was at the last ad agency, Wells-Rich Green, that, the ad agency is a young business. There's hardly anybody there that's over 30, so if you're pushing 30, you got to find something else. And that's when I decided, well, corporate, it would broaden my portfolio. But, then again, I was branded, but not in a way that I wanted to be branded. I was branded as, an ad agency person with no corporate experience, no MBA, but, it just goes to show you just keep interviewing and you're going to meet somebody where you have the right pitch. I ended up interviewing for a job in financial services on Wall Street, and one of the interviewers thought I'd worked on the I Love New York campaign for 5 years, and one of the interviewers said, what makes you think you can handle the investment bankers of, Lehman Brothers? And I said, well, my specialty is working on difficult products and with difficult clients. And if I've handled politicians, I think I can handle the investment bankers of Lehman Brothers. And that's how I got the job. It's having a smart rejoinder to why my background is a good fit, and I can solve their problem, because they had, in that business, people that make several $1 million a year, tend to be pretty strong personalities. And, I was pretty good at handling, I like the challenge personally. And so that's how I got the job. So, you're going to evolve. And then later I decided, that entrepreneurial thing, I always thought someday I'll do something entrepreneurial. Well, I decided the day was now, and, I moved over and started SelfBrand, and, again, trying to get a different idea. There are a lot of consultants out there. I didn't think I could be successful with all the competition. So the newer idea was this whole idea of personal branding. And I thought, well, gee, I think I have something to bring to the party, because I have this advertising background, and I can show how brand strategy from the commercial world of brands, can help you in developing your brand and your game plan for success. And so, that's in essence what my books are about, and, what I do now.
And I'm looking at, and I'm going to just this to the audience, because we've only got 3 minutes left. It's the quickest hour. I do this twice a week, and every time I get to the end, I'm like, God, that went fast. That went too fast. That's what happened with us last time. So you've got to come back. But I am on the new brand you, how to wow in the new world of work. And I'm on page 185, and it's the personal brand action plan. Buy this book. Go to that page. Read the whole book, but go to that page, seriously.
Right.
So, Catherine, before I let you go, is there anything else that you really wanted to share with the audience that I didn't think to ask about?
Well, I'm glad you brought up the action plan, because the whole thing that's key is you don't have anything unless you take action. And
right.
I think, you can have the smartest idea for a business, and I think that's a key thing, people should get involved with at some point in their life. And in fact, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day that 67% of millennials that work in companies want to start their own business someday. So I think, it's a key thing. And so that's what, doing an action plan, developing your brand strategy is great, but you want to take an action plan. Think of this next 6 months, 5 things that you can do that's going to take you closer to your goals that you're setting for yourself. And sit down and just brainstorm and think, what can I do? Where do I want to go? Because if you don't know where you want to go, you're not going to get there. So you want to think about that. And, and if you decide to do something entrepreneurial, there's a lot of advice out there. I mean, I got involved with SCORE, which is through the SBA, but it provides free mentors to people planning to start a business. And I have to say, I'm very impressed with the other mentors that I've met. They're people that many are still working with their own business and want to give back in some way, or they're retired. So there's a lot of free help you can get too. So, learn about it and partake.
Exactly. Oh, well, listen, I agree with you, and I'm familiar with SCORE.
Yeah, I'll leave this, throw this out here. But my formula for success is, people say work hard and you'll be successful, but it's not enough. And that's why my formula is hard work plus branding equals success. And that's the key thing you want to think about, because, I talk in the book about hard power versus soft power. Hard power is the tangible things you can put on your resume, and hard power is important. It's places you've worked and schools you went to, and et cetera. But you also want to have soft power, which is all the things you can't put on your resume, your communication skills, your image, your knowledge, all those things that are so important to career success.
And see, I have always termed what you're talking about soft skills. I am changing that to soft power. That just makes so much more sense. Right.
And it's very broad. It's who you know and who knows you. That's part of your soft power. And you want to be known. You want to be visible. Visibility is part of branding. but it's visibility is very important for people, because if somebody's very visible in a company, we think, well, gee, he must be better than her because I've heard of him, and I haven't heard of her. So it's something, we all think like that. We're human beings. So you want to be known for something, and
Absolutely.
known for something to value. Yeah.
Well, before I let you go, tell people where they can find you and how to find the assessment.
Okay, great. You can find me. My website is SelfBrand.com, SelfBrand.com. My new book is The New Brand You, How to Wow in the New World of Work. And in the book, in the end of Chapter 3, is the link to the online personal brand assessment test. So you can take, it's 200 questions, but they're all very short and quick. And it really gives you a readout of these 10 brand strategies and where you fit on the spectrum, and which 2 or 3 might be important for you to develop in terms of your personal brand. It really gets into your preferences and the questions, and the brand personality is different from each of these 10 positioning strategies. So it's really an additional way that you can look at yourself, at your strengths, based on your personality, your preferences, and your strengths.
Perfect.
SelfBrand.com.
Right. And thank you. Catherine, thank you so much for coming back. I really appreciate it. And it's always wonderful speaking with you. And I thank you for all the terrific tips and advice that you've shared with our audience. And audience, listen to me, grab the book. We've mentioned it several times, but it's a terrific book. And if you are looking to figure out who you are, how you're going to show up in the world, how you're going to show up in your own business or somebody else's business, this is an important part of my entrepreneurial library. I'll just put it that way. So before we say goodbye, I would like to remind our audience to be sure to look for us in iTunes, Audible, anywhere that wherever you go, wherever you consume your business podcasts, you can find us. The truth is you can't throw a stick on the internet without hitting your Partner in Success Radio. So find us and take us along on your success journey. Catherine, thank you so much.
Thanks for inviting me. I loved it. Thank you.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffitts at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.